that if you try to use AI to replace a human, an actor, for example, it can do it if the actor is still inside of the image. What I mean is, if you take Will Smith and you put AI over him, then that works really well to make like Jodie Foster in this series that she's in, True Detective. She has to go back 30 years and she has to be 30 years younger. AI can do that to her face, but Jodie is still in there. It's still her eyes. It's still her. AI is just changing her features, making her younger and doing all the things, right? That works. What doesn't work is if you try to make AI replace a human, because what AI doesn't have is life. It doesn't have life in the eyes, and you can't give it that because it's not human. Our spirit is what keeps the body alive, and nobody has that. Only humans have spirit, so AI can't replace that. So I don't think it'll ever be in a place where it could totally replace humans.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, Paul Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. And today we're in for a real treat as we welcome our true powerhouse to the show. Our guest is not just a name in the entertainment industry, she's a force of creativity, innovation, and especially kindness. With a career spanning decades, she's worn many hats from captivating audiences on a screen to shaping remarkable stories behind the scenes. Please join me as we extend a warm welcome to the one and only Silvia Punkin Mathis. Sylvia, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited. This is going to be great. And thank you for that intro. Wow.
And it's just amazing how every time I say my intro and introduce the guest, they just light up. It's amazing.
Well, it's because when you live it and you do it and you don't really think about it, and then when you hear someone else say it, you're like, wow. You know
That's
what I mean?
fantastic.
Yeah.
And before we begin, with the in-depth questions, because I do have some, can you give us a quick intro on who Sylvia Punkin Mathis is? Maybe a quick intro on the
Well,
nickname and your experiences and what keeps you busy these days.
you kind of covered it. I mean, like you said, I've been in the industry for God, over since I was a kid, over 30 years, almost 40 years now. And I am, I started out as a singer, actress, in that way, a dancer, and then got more behind the scenes and got doing that work. So professionally, you pretty well covered it. Personally, I am a mom and a wife and a grandma. I'm sorry, I have hair falling in my face. And I have four children that I gave birth to, and then I have two bonus kids. I call them bonus kids, and then I have nine grandchildren. And so we just kind of have this really crazy, fun, amazing life. They live all over the country, so that's really fun. As far as my nickname goes, my nickname is sort of funny. I'm not going to give you my whole birth history, but I was born 3 months early. And so, because I was born 3 months early, I was really, really small. And so my mom told me that they gave me these shots or whatever to try and, fatten me up. Back in those days, they thought a fat baby was a healthy baby. And so by the time I was a year old, I was this little pumpkin, basically, with a little head and a little round body. And so they started calling me Pumpkin. But one of my, I believe it was a sibling of mine, couldn't say pumpkin. So he would just say pumpkin, and it just kind of stuck. And it's so funny because for years I just didn't want, I thought, I'm too mature to be called Pumpkin, and it just didn't seem. And then as I got older, now I'm 58 now, and so at this point in my life, it's like it feels very much like it's me, it's the part of me that's bright-eyed and believes anything is possible, and it's like the little girl in me that is so just enamored with possibility, right? And so that's definitely still who I am. And so that's why for me, Punkin Studios was the perfect name, because we're all about infusing everything that we do with kindness, with a focus toward infinite possibility.
That is
So yeah.
fantastic. To be honest, I thought punkin is a reference on your singing career. Punk. Like rocking
Oh
punkin. Yeah,
no,
I thought it was that.
no, it's no, it's just totally my nickname. As far as my music goes, I am classically trained. I started singing professionally when I was about 12. I did my first operetta when I was 12 years old. And the funny story there is I auditioned with a bunch of my friends from performing arts middle school for a show called Noah's Flood, and it was in Latin. So the whole show was in Latin, and I'm 12 years old. And so we all auditioned. And of course, honestly, John, all my friends, are you John or John
John.
Paul?
John would
John,
be awesome. Yeah.
do you prefer John? Okay. So all my friends auditioned, right? And I'm standing there with my mom, and we all sang and did our thing, and they all got picked, and I didn't get picked. So it was like, Sarah and Bobby, you're going to be giraffes, because the arc, 2 by 2, Noah's Flood. Sarah and Johnny, you're going to be giraffes. And Andrew and Susan, you're going to be, whatever, horses. And they never called my name. Turned out they didn't call my name because I had gotten cast as one of the leads. And the next youngest person was 18 years old. And when they found out I was 12, they were like, what? So so my singing career kind of started more in like the musical theater and classical kind of space. And then as I started performing with bands, of course, we sang everything from, rock to punk to pop to R&B and everything. So yeah.
That is fantastic. Classical music, you either love it or you hate it. But yeah, it fills your
Yeah.
heart. It's just different.
It does. Yeah, it does. It does. A musician friend of mine used to say all the time, what comes from the heart goes to the heart. And I think when it comes to classical music, for me, I just love all kinds of music. I love everybody from Aretha Franklin to Karen Carpenter to Billie Eilish to, Sia. Like I just love music, you know what I mean? And so for me, if it makes me feel something, I don't care what the genre is. I guess I can't really say I love acid rock, but I do like hard rock and
That's
yeah.
fantastic.
So
And I guess almost everyone, different seasons in their life have different tastes in music. Is that correct?
right,
That's
for
fantastic.
sure.
And since you already told us the meaning of pumpkin, which is an amazing story, pumpkin, and yeah, can you elaborate on us why your passion is for kindness, especially in your studio?
Right, right. Thank you for asking me. I It's so funny because a lot of my friends who are what we call in the kindness space, or our brand, or part of their brand is kindness, they very much like have a thing that happened. Like, right, like they such and such was going on, or so and so was going on, and their whole life just like became something that was crashed and burned, basically. And so to recover, they discovered the power of kindness. My story's not that. I don't remember a time when kindness wasn't a part of me. I remember actually being a really young girl, little girl, like 4 or 5 years old, and being very sad because I didn't feel like the kids at school were being very nice at the time. I thought nice and kind were the same thing. And I would try so hard to be kind and be sweet. And, I had bullies and people like that. And so I just don't remember, but it was, my mom said to me, she goes, you keep being who you are. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of spiritual and emotional maturity to be kind. And so she said to me, you have to just keep being who you are. Don't ever change. One of these days, you're going to realize the strength in the power in the kind of person that you are. And it turned out that she was right. And so that, for me, what I know about kindness is that it is the power to change not only lives, but hearts and minds. And quite frankly, it's starting to affect people's bottom lines. Even big corporate America is discovering that when you have a kind space, people are more productive. And if people are more productive, they don't make mistakes. And if people don't make mistakes, that affects your bottom line. And it's I used to, but one of my friends and I, we always say, if people discover that kindness is profitable, everybody will be kind. And it's starting to become the reality that people are understanding that when you treat people with respect, and I don't mean, John, I don't mean to ramble on, but I don't mean just being nice, because you can be nice on the outside and have a dark heart, right? With kindness, it comes from the inside. You can't be kind and have a dark heart. Kindness is, I call it, my definition of kindness is love outpictured. So it's not just how you feel, and it's not a mask, it's who you are. And it comes from within, and it radiates through the energy around you. And so for me, I don't remember ever not knowing that, and not having that be a very strong part of
That's
who I am.
fantastic. And I think it's important to emphasize how you said it comes from within. Because in my beliefs,
Hmm.
someone who is kind is someone who is compassionate. And for someone to be compassionate, you need to
Yeah,
put your mind in the shoes of others instead of only thinking about yourself, which is fascinating.
exactly. Exactly, exactly. You have to have the empathy component in order to even activate compassion. And even if something happens that I've never experienced, like I've never had my house bombed, I don't know what that feels like, but I do know what it feels like to lose something. And so even though I may not know that exact experience, and I may not have the exact empathy to feel what that person feels, I always say this too. I don't know how you feel, right? But I know how I would feel. And I know that what you feel is not great. You don't feel happy about something bad happening. So just the fact that there's any pain involved at all, my compassion says, and my empathy says, I want you to feel better. And how can I help? You know what I mean? What can I do? And sometimes helping is just doing nothing but just listening. You know what I mean? Just letting somebody have a safe space to share how they feel. And I think especially now, post COVID, we've seen a world where, from Hollywood to corporate America to blue collar folks all across the country and in tech everywhere, it's like everyone is sort of reeling from the aftermath of how COVID affected them. When we were in the middle of it, there was a lot of compassion. Everybody was trying to be kind and loving each other, and we couldn't wait to get back out so we could give each other a hug and all of that. And now here we are 4 years out, and it's almost like everybody is in some level of grief recovery. People are angry, people are, tight, people are just kind of lashing at each other. And it's a perfect time for us to start to lend grace to each other. Just give each other a little, especially on social media, just give each other a break. Everybody is going through what they're going through. And if you know the stages of grief, there are all these stages that you go through. And I think everybody is sort of at some stage, some point on that spectrum at the moment,
That's
So yeah.
fantastic. And let's go back to your childhood. I know, if I'm not mistaken, you were born in Arkansas. No, no.
No,
Oh,
I was
in
actually born in Illinois. I live in Arkansas now, but I was born not too far. Illinois is not too far from Arkansas, but I was born just north of Chicago in a town called Rockford.
And
That's where I
how
was born.
did
Mhm.
being born in Rockford change your life? Or I think it shaped your life?
Um, Shaped my life. It's funny because Rockford is what I like to describe as it's a big city with a small town mentality. So, in terms of the geography, Rockford is not that much smaller than Chicago or Springfield. It's pretty big. But in terms of the mindset, it feels like a small town. Everybody's a lot of, people are very community minded. There's a lot of churches and people what we used to call fellowship with each other a lot. And they, so you just feel like, I remember growing up and knowing in our neighborhood that there were going to be at least 4 or 5 houses of people who knew us and knew our parents, and they were going to look out for us. Like, you always knew that someone was looking out for you when it came to the grown-ups, but you also knew that if you did something not so great, that they were going to tell your parents, or they might discipline you themselves. That's kind of the way it was back then. People, you've heard the term, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, in this sense, that's how I grew up. I grew up with that sort of village mentality of, and really more diverse than you might expect, with, Black people and white people. And one of my best friends was Philippine girl. And, it was just, that's how we grew up. So it shaped me because it helped me to have a very strong sense of integrity and a very strong sense of, my word is my word. Keep your word to your own hurt. My word is my bond. And so for me, that was a very nice kind of grounding. And my dad gave me the sense of, no matter what happens in your life, no matter what you go through in your life, no matter what, it's going to be okay. We'll figure it out. And that has helped me, obviously, throughout my life, in times when things were challenging, not to give up.
That's
So yeah.
fantastic. And do you think there's more pros than cons from having a small town mentality, as you said?
I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily pros and cons. I think it's just different, because I lived a good part of my life growing up, even growing up in Chicago, which is definitely not a small town, and also in New York. So it's just different. I mean, I think that even in big cities, you find clusters of communities where people kind of live in that way anyway. Even in LA or in the Bronx or on the south side of Chicago, there's still kind of clusters of communities where people live that way. The difference with a big city is there's certainly more areas where people don't know their neighbors, and they live in sky rises or whatever, and they never really know the people they live around. And so I mean, for me, I think it's just different. I don't think it's better or worse. I would say, if I had to pick one thing that makes living in a bigger city kind of great, is the opportunity to do stuff. Like going to museums and going to the theater, and just opportunity for different kinds of schools to attend and that stuff, that sort of thing. But I will say, my husband often teases me. He says, "You went to a private public school." By that he means, my high school was, I went to a performing arts high school, Auburn Performing Arts High School. Yay, go Knights. And it was very well funded. So we had an equestrian team, we had tennis, we had all the music. Not only did we have orchestra, but we had all the little small choral groups for the choir. We had jazz band. We had international club. We had so many things that a lot of public schools don't have. And I think part of that, again, was because it was very well funded. We had a gymnastics team, like at my high school. Like, this is what it was, and even in my middle school. So in that regard, Rockford is a little bit different because it has an equity theater, more than one equity theater. So big Broadway shows would come to Rockford, and you could even audition for like a Broadway show. And so it was unique in that, like I said, it was a big city with a small town mentality, but with more access to like bigger city opportunities. And to your question, I think that's kind of the difference, is that a bigger city often will afford you opportunity that a
That's
small town won't.
fantastic. And did you first, I know you said from when you were 12 years old, you were able to have a lead in a
Hmm.
Latin play. By the way, how did that go? I
Hmm.
mean, do you naturally speak
It was
Latin,
great.
or did you have to?
I had to learn how to speak Latin for the show. Yeah, because we had to sing in Latin, and then because of being classically trained, I had to learn how to sing. I learned to sing in German,
Oh,
Latin, and Italian. And so we learned. I don't remember learning. I think I learned one French song, which I can't remember right now. But we learned how to do that. So that was just another facet of what I was going to train to do. Now, you have to understand, I started high school when I was 13. So when I was 12, I was already in ninth grade. I mean, in eighth grade. You know what I mean? So I was kind of heading in that direction anyway. And the show went really well. It was very well received. The interesting thing about it is that it was held at this place called the Mendelssohn Club. And Mendelssohn obviously is, he's written some beautiful, beautiful pieces of music. And so the club was it was a theater that celebrated classical music. And so everybody who came there specifically to see the classical music, whether it was instruments, the orchestra, or an operetta like Noah's Flood. That wasn't my first time performing. It was my first time performing in that kind of environment. I started writing and producing and directing shows when I was like 9. So, we used to get my friend Linda Robinson. Her name is Linda Awkward now, but she and I used to just be obsessed with like some of those old Hollywood movies, the black old ones, like with Judy Garland and not Cary Grant. What's his name? The dancer. It'll come to me in a second. But Fred Astaire and what is the other guy's name who starred in Singing in the Rain? It'll come to me in a second. We used to just be obsessed with those old movie musicals. And, even back then they were already old from like the 40s and stuff. And so she taught herself to play the piano and she played viola and I played viola as well. So we would write songs and we would write the show and I would direct them and we would produce them together and cast them and with all the kids in the neighborhood and we charge 50 cents to come to our shows. And so so I started doing that
That's
pretty young.
amazing since a lot of people have different dreams, but as for your story, you actually wanted to become a producer and you actually became one, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, what's funny though? I don't know. It's funny that you asked me that because people often will ask me that. I don't know that I necessarily set out to be a producer or even a director. I think I always thought for me it was always like I'm a singer and the only reason I get parts in shows is because I can sing. I never thought I was a good actress. I never thought I would ever be a director or producer. I didn't even know I could do that. Because at the time when I was a kid, I didn't know I was
Oh,
producing. I was just putting on a show. Do you know what I mean? And so it wasn't like in my head, I'm going to be like, this great producer, Cecil B. DeMille, and I'm going to be Steven Spielberg, whatever. It was just, this is how you made a show happen. And I wanted to be in a show. So I made a show, which is kind of what I do now. Kind of what I do now. But yeah, it was always there, but I don't think I really recognized it until I got older.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And from 12 years old, did you continue singing or did you had a break to become an actress?
No, it kind of all overlapped because I never, again, it's so funny how your life does what it does. I never kind of thought, oh, I'm going to go be this great like film and television actress. Like I'm going to do, for me, it was always theater, musical theater. I was headed to Broadway. That's what I wanted. That's what only thing I cared about. When I was a kid, there was a show on Broadway called Annie and there was another one called The Wiz. And Annie starred this amazing singer named Andrea McCardle, and she played Annie in this Broadway show. And the other one was an amazing singer named Stephanie Mills starred in this show, The Wiz. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be a Broadway baby. I want to be one of those kids, right? So for me, it was always about getting to Broadway. What ended up happening was I went to college, ended up going to school. My mom got ill. Had always been ill pretty much. But when I was 17, she had a really bad heart attack. And so while I was in college, I went back home to kind of help and ended up just like staying there. And I just started auditioning around. And before you knew it, I was chosen to be in this girls group back in Chicago called the Chicago Collectibles. And we recorded and performed all over Chicago and did all of that. So it kind of went that way. Rather, I didn't really go, okay, I'm going to stop acting and sing, or I'm just going to stop singing, stop dancing, and I'm going to act. I just kind of went with where the work was taking me. And so for that part of my life, it was all about performing. We were performing, 5 sets a night every weekend for 2 years. So all I did was sing. It wasn't, and I did some modeling at that time too, but mostly it was about me as a singer. And so by default, the acting got put on the back burner, but it wasn't because I didn't want to do it anymore. I was just taking the opportunities that were presented to me. And throughout my life, that's kind of what I've done. Um, I got I got very, very focused on the acting when I moved to Dallas because, again, the opportunities were presenting themselves. And I had been doing a lot of theater. But when I got to Texas, I ended up signing with an agent named Linda McAllister and started working right away. I mean, I probably did 8 or 9 movies while I was in Dallas. And I did, and most of them I had the lead in or some kind of co-lead. But a lot of they're all, mostly were indie films. And then I booked the role on this show called Walker Texas Ranger. I booked a role, just a guest star, nothing. And then they ended up bringing me back to star in a pilot for a spinoff. And so when that happened, obviously I'm going to now start focusing more on television acting, you know what I mean? And that's kind of how that all sort of happened.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And if you don't mind me asking, how was your life with your late mother affected the way you write stories?
How was my life with her? Do you mean
How did
when she
she
was alive,
inspire
or
you?
how did her death affect? Um, my mother inspired me in so many tangible and intangible ways. It's a little bit difficult to pick one thing, but if I have to sort of put it into a capsule, my mother was physically beautiful. She's 5'9", green eyes, lean and just gorgeous. But she was also brilliant. My mother graduated from college when she was 19. And she missed a year because she was sick, and she still graduated when she was 19. She was just a brilliant, brilliant woman. She was funny. Excellence was always for her. The standard was I interpreted it as a child. I interpreted her standard as perfection. So I took it on myself to try to like be perfect all the time. But really, it wasn't perfection. It was excellence. Her, whatever your best is, whatever excellence is, that's what you aim for always. If you don't make it, you don't make it. But you always aim, and everything she did was excellent. The way she cooked, the way she took care of us as a teacher, she created curriculum that is still being used in Rockford today. Like my mother was this beautifully bright and yet not imposing, but somewhat intimidating, even kind of by accident, presence that inspired everything that I am and everything that I do. And yeah, she was like, I hate to talk about her in the past tense because what I believe is that we live eternally. I just believe this body, this shell goes away, but we never die. So when I think of my mother, I think of her in the present tense. Though I do wish, for sometimes, you think, oh, I wish I could have a cup of coffee with her. I wish I could, you know what I mean? Like I wish I could physically be with her, but she was sick when she died. And I would rather have her body go and let her be free than for her to be trapped in a sick body. But yeah, she did. She inspired everything. And probably my love of reading. I love books and I love libraries. When I tell you I love libraries, I mean, and this is a little known secret. So here I'll just tell you, I love libraries so much that whenever I go anywhere, when I go to fly to shoot something, or when I go to visit someone, the one of the first things I do
Ah,
is find the
it looks
library.
like you're in a library
I
actually.
love. I am. I'm actually in Arkansas, where I live in Fort Smith, has one of the most beautiful libraries in the country. And so I often will come here and it was so funny today, even though I didn't get the room that I wanted that had all the beautiful light, all the light to make me gorgeous. I'm in this other room. It's a beautiful room. It's called the Arkansas room, and it's a genealogy room. So I'm surrounded with all this Arkansas history. But my mother instilled the love of libraries in me. My mother was the one that instilled my love of reading and my love of books. And I probably read over 120 or
Ooh,
30 books a year. And I'm not exaggerating. I literally, sometimes I'll read 2 and 3 books at the same time because and my authors, I love everybody from James Baldwin to James Patterson to, I mean, it just, you name it across the board. Like I read political books, I read fiction, I read historical fiction, I read nonfiction, I read everything.
that's
I
like
love to
three
read.
books
Yeah.
a week. That's like a book every 3 days. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
fascinating.
It's not hard for me because a lot of times what I'm doing is I have it on audiobook. And so I let it play while I'm working so I can devour a
Huh.
whole book in a day because I just turn it on in the morning and let it play and let it
How do
play.
you think
Yeah.
how important reading a book actually is today, especially with the attention span that we have because of TikTok.
Yeah, yeah, right. I know. I mean, obviously, I think it's super important, and I do physically read books as well. But I don't always have as much because when I read a book, I need to sit down and really read it, focus on it. When I'm listening to a book and reading it with an audiobook, I can focus on it and still kind of do other things. I think that a couple of things have really suffered. Well, more than a couple, but a couple. Since you mentioned TikTok, the attention span that's affected it. I think now they're saying the average kid has attention span of like 8 seconds or something, and the average adult is something like 15 or 20 seconds. I think it's also affecting the ability of Zoomers and I would say some millennials to they don't know how to write anymore. They don't know how to like actually physically write words. They know how to type. They know how to text. They know how to. They don't even have to know how to spell because everything's being checked for them. And I heard a story here recently at the post office. This young woman came in to mail a letter, and she wasn't a baby. She was like 30, and she came in to mail a letter, and she didn't know how to address it. She didn't know how to address a letter because she'd never had to do that. Everything was email. And they asked her to sign it at the bottom of the she didn't know how to sign her name. Now, this girl's not illiterate. She's a college, she's got a college degree, but she hadn't had to sign her name in cursive. So she didn't know how to do that. And what I'm saying is that that's kind of what's happening. If I were to affect curriculum for the schools right now, and I probably will, I might do something like this with Punkin Studios, is that the idea of children learning how to measure, knowing the difference between metric and the way the way that we measure things with inches and all of that and pounds and ounces as opposed to liters and grams and all of that, understanding how to do that. I think the other thing that kids are losing is the analytical ability to just figure things out, to just work at it until you figure it out, because everything is. And listen, I am the queen of Google and AI and all the things. I use it all the time, and I love tech. So I'm not smashing tech or TikTok. I'm just saying that things like simple things like reading a book
Yeah.
give you so much. They give you so much, and your brain is like any other part. You need to exercise it. You need to give it a reason, give that hippocampus a
Yeah,
reason to
it's
be
a muscle.
squishy. You
You
know what I
can
mean?
make it. Yeah, you can improve it. And on your point on books, I
Yeah,
used to be able to read 2 books a week, but now I can't even get
yeah.
over one book. I mean, I have a lot of book there, and most of them I bought when I was in love at reading books. But most of them I haven't read a single page. Yeah,
But you know what though, when you get back into it, it's kind of like recently my husband and I have started cycling again. And so we don't, I mean, we're not like majors. We do like 11 miles a day, right? And you forget how much fun that is because you're just going to jump in a car or jump in an Uber or whatever. You forget how much fun it is to just go for a really long walk. You know what I mean? Just go that, or just get on your bike and just ride around. And I think with books, it's the same. When you start picking it up again, you know what I mean? You'll remember, you'll love it.
I
You'll
hope
love it
so.
again.
I bought a lot of fiction books that I'm planning to read.
But you read so much
Yeah.
because you have to do this. And so you're reading and you're listening and you're editing and you're preparing. You know what I mean? So you are reading. You're just not reading for pleasure
Absolutely.
anymore.
And I guess that's one part that people can, get out of the conversation. Sometimes you can integrate something you
Yeah.
love in your work so that even if you're working, you
Yeah.
are doing what you love. You just don't notice it.
Well, that's true. That's true. And I think for me, sometimes I like to read books because I have to read so many scripts that when I'm reading a script, I'm rarely ever reading it for enjoyment. I'm reading it to find the story. I'm reading, I have to do a tech read or I have to break it down and whatever. So I don't really just get to get in there and enjoy the experience of of the story. I have to read it for a different reason. So reading other kinds of material helps my brain just decompress. You know what
I
I
guess
mean?
maybe
Which
you
is good.
can
Yeah.
try to use it as a reason against yourself. Hey, if I'm reading this script, I don't live even like this story. Maybe I can force myself to read this book that I actually like.
Exactly. It's a reward for me. I do it. I do it as a reward. I mean, look, I'm not. I've lived in the house where I've had housekeepers and all the things. I don't have that right now, and so I'm doing the laundry. Like I'm washing the dishes. I'm the one. So a lot of times that's my time to put my headphones in, and you know what I mean, and just have that time to to do that, to listen, to
That's
just read something
fantastic. And if
wonderful.
you have a choice, if you can pick a favorite, let's say you have three books that you would recommend anyone to read, any genre at all, what would you
Mhm.
recommend and why?
Oh my gosh, that is so not fair. Let's see. Well, there's this really, 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 really old book. It was written in 1910 by a guy named Wallace Wattles. The book is called The Science of Getting Rich. And while that title might sound a bit provocative, if you don't know who Wallace Wattles is, he wrote that, he titled it that on purpose to get people in to read the book, because the book is not about it is about getting rich, but it's not about getting rich for the sake of getting rich. It's about learning to think in a certain way, learning to live in a certain way. So the other books in the trilogy are The Science of Getting Rich, The Science of Being Well, and The Science of Being Great. It will take you all of 25 minutes to read that book. I highly recommend it. The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. Read it. It will change your life. It'll become one of those books that you'll want to have on while you're like doing other things, just so you can hear it again and again.
I'm
It's life altering. I'm not exaggerating. I've probably read that book, and I promise you I'm not exaggerating. I've read that book over a
A lot
hundred
of books
times.
today are basically 300 pages long. I think most of the content are
Yeah.
fluff. You don't even need to read it. And I guess you love the science
This
of getting rich because it gets to the point, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, it really does. But again, it was written in 1910, so some of the verbiage is a little bit. But if you get it on, not to plug Audible, but if you get it on Audible, you can get the Wallace Wattles collection, and all of his books are in there. That's one. In terms of what am I reading, right? So I recommend that for everybody. I also, in terms of the self development space, that's the top of my list. I am really right now. I just finished a book called The Edge by James Patterson. Really good. Lots of intrigue and all kinds of, really fun things. And one of my favorite fiction authors is a woman named Louise Penny. And she's written a whole series of these Three Pines books, Armand Gamache. In fact, she's got a series on Amazon right now called Three Pines, but the book is better. Not to slam the series, but the book is better. And so, so I enjoy that, and I'm always going to be someone that recommends that you give the Bible at least one good. There's just a lot of great stuff in there. A lot of great stuff in the Bible. So right now, that's the type. If you ask me an hour from now, I'll probably have different different ones, but those are the ones I'm reading right now. So
That's
they're in my head.
fantastic. And yeah, Bible
Yeah,
or any kinds of basically holy books does not
yeah,
only show you great
yeah.
stories, also basically becomes a guide on life.
So, wisdom, exactly, exactly. How to love, how to live, how to enjoy it. One of my favorite passages of the Bible says, "Love God and enjoy your life." Yeah,
And these
it's good. It's
stories
a good
are
thing.
from
Yeah.
thousands of years ago, and most of them are
I
still
know.
relevant today, which is fascinating. You see, the technology is changing, the
Absolutely.
society changing, but we as a people, as society, we stay the same, which is fascinating.
You know how you can really see that? Look at a baby. You can take a baby from the 1800s, a baby right now, a baby in the South Sudan, a baby in Manhattan, a baby in Paris, and sit them all in a room together. They're all the same. They all want the same thing. They all behave the same way. I'm talking little ones, like two, one a year old. They're all the same. We don't do all of this separating and delineating because of ethnicity and nationality and whether you're a girl or a guy or whatever, skinny or fat or whatever. We don't do that till we get older. We're not born with that in our head. That's those are learned behaviors and learned ways of being in the world. And I think that's where kindness comes in. I think we come here that way. There are some people who teach that we come here with a sin nature, and that's a whole other biblical thing. But in terms of who we are and our physicality here with each other, we love each other. We start out loving each other unconditionally. We start out trying things. How many times do you think you fell on your little behind when you were trying to learn to walk? You just get up and do it again, and you get up and do it again. If you watch a baby trying to learn to walk, they don't care if they fall 100 times. They just do it again and do it again. How many times when you're 2 or 3 years old, you're learning to conjugate verbs? You're learning like a new word, like 5 new words a day. That was never supposed to stop. But we get all consumed with all of this that we start to put limits on ourselves and expectations on others. Yeah.
That's fascinating,
Interesting.
especially today. Most, if not everyone, is scared of making mistakes, and I think it's necessary for growth and for being a better person. I mean, if
Yeah.
you can't accept
Yeah.
failures within yourself, you won't be able to accept it in others, in your kid, in your husband, in your colleagues. You won't be able to.
Right. No, no, it's grace. Remember at the top of this, we were talking about the grace component. And like you said you were talking about compassion, empathy. People are terrified of making a mistake. And I think they're even more afraid of making a mistake publicly because they know, unlike any other time in history, you make a mistake, 2 seconds later, 1,000 people have responded to it and have an opinion about it. And they're all talking about it on social media, even if you're not famous. There's going to be all, and it's like, no, so everyone's just like walking on eggshells and everyone's afraid. It's like, until somebody just comes out and goes, have you seen the movie Poor
I don't
Things?
think so. I have not.
Okay. It's Emma Stone and, oh gosh, the guy that played the Hulk. I can see his face right now. It'll come to my head in a
Mark
minute, but
Ruffalo.
it is Mark Ruffalo and Emma Stone. It's a movie about freedom. I'll just leave it there. About, how little kids don't care. They don't care what you think. They don't care about being embarrassed. They don't care about, I mean, when they're really little, when they get to be a little older, they care. But when they're little, they just do. They just do things. They just do what they feel. They do what makes them happy and brings them joy. This movie is about what it would be like to live that way. And it got nominated for an Oscar. In fact, I think Emma Stone won the Oscar for this film this past year. If you get a minute, it's on Hulu.
I
It's
will
called
watch
Poor
it.
Things. Give
Absolutely.
it a watch.
And it's freeing
Yeah.
to be able to just do things not because you're required to, but it's just fun. I mean, every morning
Right.
I go outside. I have a boxing setup there. I put on my gloves. I put on some 80s music because not to be a I don't
Hey
I don't
man,
like the
80s
music
music
today just because most of them doesn't have heart in it. Just different. The 80s music, fascinating.
is so different. And I'm an 80s baby. So, like for me, I wasn't born in the 80s, obviously, but I was a young teenager in the 80s, right? And so for me, that music, all of that, Michael Jackson and Prince and Whitney Houston and all of that. I mean, if you really like 80s music, listen to 90s R&B.
My mother
Yeah.
tells me always, your music taste is older than mine.
Hey man, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix. Come on, man.
And I just sing them even
Yeah.
if my neighbors from across the street they hear it. I don't care. I'm gonna sing it. Even if my voice sucks so much, I don't care. I'm gonna sing it. I love it. And let's get
I
back to
love it.
the topic. How
It's fun talking to you, by the way. It is so much
That's
fun talking
amazing.
to
And
you.
I have these bullet points on what topics I'd like to speak about. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, I took your time. I asked you to spend time with me. The least I can do is to make the experience fun. And most of the time,
It
people
is
love
fun.
talking
I'm
about
having the best.
experiences, and I love to. So I just talk about it nonstop.
I
And
love it.
how do you perceive the impact of AI, especially in the entertainment industry? And do you actually use it today?
Yes. Well, okay. So let me just start by saying when we were, do you know that Screen Actors Guild was on strike?
Yeah, I think it was last year, if I'm not
So
mistaken.
no, it was like 8 or 9 months. It was a nightmare. But the Writers Guild was on strike first, which affected us because the writers couldn't write, right? And without the writers, you can't do your show. And then Screen Actors Guild, so that's all the actors. I'm a SAG actor, so all the actors, we couldn't produce them, we couldn't do anything. So everybody had to stop. Um, During that time, a lot of the discussion was about AI and the fear of all the fear mongering around what AI was going to do and what AI was going to bring to the party and how it was going to affect everything and it's going to take all the jobs. And oh my gosh, people were just going crazy. Well, I'm a little different. First of all, I'm a tech person. I love tech. I love technology. I, I I think when people see me or they meet me or they know what I do for a living, they don't immediately associate with me with tech. But I absolutely love tech. I was even starting to learn to write code for a while. So for me, AI is fascinating. But here's the thing: it's not new. AI is not new. People are just focusing on it and calling it AI, artificial intelligence. But let's be real. Anytime you've ever done a spell check, you've used AI. I don't care if it was in the 80s when you were on your computer or sending it. It's been around forever. And the thing that people don't realize is by the time we hear about something or we can buy it, it's already
Absolutely.
obsolete. So by the time you buy your iPhone, it's already that technology is already obsolete. They've already it's that's the truth. So the fact that it's here and available in the way that it's available is just a little tiny little glimmer of what's possible. Can it be abused? Of course it can be abused. Just like back in freaking, the 1800s when I'll say in the Industrial Revolution, everybody was terrified of flight because it was all about the steam engine, right? So nobody wanted to and then flight came and just took everything over, but it didn't make it worse. I mean, for the people who built their fortunes in the steam engine world, it was difficult if they weren't ready to make the switch, just like Blockbuster wasn't ready to make the switch, when Netflix came to bear. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Just because it can be abused doesn't mean it's bad and shouldn't ever be used. I am a fan. I'm not a fan of AI, of people using it to take people's jobs away and all of that, especially for writers. But as someone who, in answer to the last part of your question, I use AI almost every day. And for me, the way that I use it, I think is probably the way it was designed to be used. This is how I use it in multiple ways. When I'm reading a screenplay, and I need to do coverage on the screenplay. Coverage is a film term for determining whether or not you feel like you can shoot this film, what the budget's going to be, whether it's technically sound, whether there's a through line and a story and a narrative that makes sense. So basically, it's just called coverage. What do you think about the script? Well, it used to be when you read a script and you had to do coverage, that took hours because you had to read every word and break down everything. And I have the skill set to do that. I've done it for years. But now I have AI. So now I can read the script and AI can read the script and serve as my assistant. So that I go through and I say, what do you think about this? And it'll give me its opinion. And I'll say, no, that's too, give me something more personal, give me something more general. And more personal and more intimate. And it'll give me something more intimate. And then I go through and compare. It may think of something I didn't even think of, but then I got to add the humanity to it. You don't just take that and just use that as your coverage. You have to go in and add the humanity to it. And so I use it when I'm doing coverage. I also use it if I need to create a log line or a synopsis. If I have it read the script for me and give me some ideas for a log line, and it'll give me some ideas, and then I go through and turn those log lines into my log line because I put my stamp on it. That to me is the way it should be used. If I have Yesterday I was using one of the AI platforms that I use, and I said, I need a new intro for myself. I need to, because I keep adding new things that I'm doing, new things I'm producing, and I don't want it to get wordy. You know what I mean? And just be too, used to be you would hire somebody to do that for you. Now, AI can look at my EPK, look at my bio, look at my resume, look at my website and go, and it can say, this is a good 25-word intro for yourself. And I look at it and go, take out all the AI indicators and let me read it again. Okay, now I'm reading it. I'm going, okay, now let me add my personal touch to it. So absolutely, I'm a huge, huge fan.
Yeah,
A huge fan.
it's a great starting
Absolutely.
point. If you don't know where to start, basically say, yeah.
It's a great, yeah, it's also a great polisher. It's a great thing because sometimes you may be tired or whatever, and it doesn't get tired. So it can go through and see things you may have missed as well, and so those are the ways that I use it right now. Again, obviously it can be abused, and but the thing that's interesting about it, and I'll stop, but this is on my mind because I love AI, but the is that if you try to use AI to replace a human, an actor, for example, it can do it if the actor is still inside of the image. What I mean is, if you take Will Smith and you put AI over him, then that works really well to make like Jodie Foster in this series that she's in, True Detective. She has to go back 30 years and she has to be 30 years younger. AI can do that to her face, but Jodie is still in there. It's still her eyes. It's still her. AI is just changing her features, making her younger and doing all the things, right? That works. What doesn't work is if you try to make AI replace a human, because what AI
Yeah.
doesn't have is
But
life. It doesn't have life in the eyes, and you can't give it that because it's not human. Our spirit is what keeps the body alive, and nobody has that. Only humans have spirits, so you can't AI can't replace that. So I don't think it'll ever be in a place where it could totally replace humans. That's just my opinion, but who knows? Somebody may watch this 20 years from now and go, "That was low nonsense."
and
You know what
at
I mean?
the end of the day, it's just a tool. I mean, if you have a hammer
It
and
is.
if you suck at being a carpenter, at the end of the day, you won't still be able to put that nail on that wood properly. You still need to have the skills.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are scared with AI because instead of actually trying to, this looks cool, I'll try to incorporate it with what I do. They just, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, they just
Yeah.
complain. And I think they just complain.
It's a great, yeah, yeah, and that was a great example too. But try this, add this to the example. Here's a hammer, right? Whack, right? That's so much easier than trying to press it in. But you know what's even easier than a hammer? A nail gun. So for me, a nail gun is AI.
And
The hammer is what we had with the regular internet and Google and spell check. AI is the nail gun. But AI can't build the house for you. It can design the house. It can give you some 3D pieces, but it can't build it for you. You still have to. We can't be replaced by AI. I just don't think we can. Like I said, somebody may watch this 100 years from now. They'll pull it up in the archives and go, "Who is she saying that AI couldn't?" And everybody will be AI, and it'll be
And
crazy.
yeah,
But
even
yeah,
the podcast plan that I have, most of it is from AI and I just edit it out. And the questionnaire that I have, most of it
yeah,
is from
yeah,
AI and I just make it better. I mean, that's the
yeah,
thing that you need to
yeah.
do.
You give it your touch. You put your fingerprint
Absolutely.
on it.
And
Yeah,
considering the
yeah.
growing capabilities of AI and the task, like, what would happen in script writing? Just on your opinion, would it be replaced? I mean, especially with the GPT-5. I mean, GPT-4, they funded it with $110 million. GPT-5, now it's
Yeah.
not even released yet. It has now spent $2.5 billion.
Yeah. I've used GPT-4 a lot. Um, I think that there is no way. Well, let me start on the positive. Can AI write a screenplay? Absolutely. You can just say write but you still have to tell it. You can't just type in write a screenplay. You still have to say a screen. Well, I mean, I guess you can, but I don't know what it would produce. Because it would generally come back and say, "What is it about? Who's in it?" You know what I mean? You still have to tell it the names of the characters and what the story is about. Write a screenplay in the style of Greta Gerwig, you know, in the same genre as Lady Bird, starring a teenage girl and her grumpy parents. Right? So now AI can do that, but you still have to have the humanity. but it can write a screenplay and it can write a good one. What it can't do is it can't give it the humanity. I keep saying that. There's something about when a human being is involved and the things that we understand about humanity and our physical history and our emotional capacity for creativity. AI can't do that. So when you read a screenplay, you still have to go through and fold in the human element. I don't think AI will ever be able to totally replace writers, but AI can write a screenplay. Like I said, the way I use it is I use it if I'm fleshing out ideas. I use it if I needed to do, I just use it in a number of ways. What I don't do is use it to write a whole script
That's
for me. I
fantastic.
don't
And
do that.
one of the things that I basically say to people who's asking me if AI could replace people is that when you're walking down the street, you can smell from a mile away who is a snake, which person is a bad person, which person is a good person. You smell it. Not because they have a sign that says, hey, I'm bad or hey, I'm good. No, you just evolve into being able to actually detect those things. And
Right.
I don't think AI could replace those unless, no, not until maybe 1,000 years in the future.
I don't think it will even then, because just like the babies we talked about, if you take a baby from the Stone Age and bring it into 2024, it's the same. So the AI will never be able to relate to replace us because what we bring to the party is not strictly physical. There's also, because I am a believer and I'm a person who loves God, there's a God factor in me that AI doesn't have and can never replace. There is an intuition that AI could never replace. AI is not can't be intuitive. All it can do is take information and create new things, create information from information. It can't be intuitive. It can't have a gut feeling like you just described. You're walking down the street, it's saying, when we talk about kindness, it radiates, right? We talked about energy. It's the same kind of energy if somebody's a snake. Your intuition, your gut tells you, nope, AI doesn't know
That's
that.
fantastic.
It can't feel
And
that,
I love that
you know?
you
Yeah.
brought God to that conversation. And maybe if AI is smart enough to make people actually, not be able to distinguish AI between real person and I guess they're gonna have to make people more like AI instead of AI more like people.
Exactly. Wow. Wow.
And
Yeah,
yeah, I would highly
exactly.
suggest. I had an episode with a guy named Eric Jomi. We talked about how AI would affect, especially the societal side of things, and it's a fascinating conversation. Wasn't able to sleep for a few days after we had that conversation, but I would highly suggest you
Wow.
listen to that because he brought a lot of topics, especially about how policies are made around AI and how the most
Wow.
people are on what AI are capable of, but I guess you could watch it. It's an amazing conversation.
I will.
And do
I
you
will.
have any last message to people who are listening?
Um, no, I mean, I've just had a blast talking to you. You are really, really, you're easy to talk to, and the thing that I really love about being with you is I get to geek out. I get to talk about the techie side of me that no one ever wants to talk about. So that's really fun. But I mean, for me, it's just it comes back to kindness. It comes back to believing what's possible. I think on my website, I'm trying to quote myself now, but it says, "Welcome to the kindness revolution." And for me, I want to be the captain of the kindness revolution. And I would just hope that folks would just love each other and give each other a little grace. Don't be so hard on each other. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just, yeah, give each other a little
That's
grace. Yeah.
fantastic. And I think, especially in podcast, it's important to, instead of talking about strategies or very specific things about something, it's better to talk about how a person actually feels or her experiences are. Because that's the only
Yeah.
thing that is
Yeah.
unique. Strategies, there's a three-step plan for
It's
everything, so doesn't really matter. I mean, AI can probably answer that question that I have better than I can, than you can, but they can replicate how we talked, how we had a conversation, because they don't have emotions.
Mm-mm. They can't replicate our chemistry, right? And again, you can talk about the how all day long and 5 steps to this and 3 steps to that and whatever. What AI can't identify for me is the why. Why I do what I do, why I am what I am, and the who, is which is informed by the why. It doesn't know that because that comes from my heart, and that's what AI doesn't
Yeah, it
have.
doesn't have context.
you know,
Especially because most of the
yeah.
people that are creating the AI isn't asking why are we doing this? Because at the end of the day, there's some part that would replace a lot of people's jobs. And if they ask themselves, why are we doing
Mhm.
this? The answer would not be great. It will make them feel worse. So most of the things that they ask is just how, how, how. They
How?
don't have
Yeah,
the why.
yeah. Wow, that's so good. The how, wow, because if you focus on the how, you don't have to be distracted by what the why
Absolutely.
makes you feel.
And if the
That's
creators
yeah.
can basically fathom why they're doing it, how could an AI answer a question with a why in mind?
Who see now you just started a whole nother episode. This is like you started a whole nother episode. It's just been a blast. Thank you so
And
much for
as
having
we
me.
conclude today's enlightenment conversation with you, I would just like to thank you again for spending this time with me. I know you're very busy. You have a studio. You sing, you write, you act. That's fascinating. I mean, I can't even sing.
I'm in development right now on 5
Ooh.
films. I have 5 films in development right now. So yeah, there's a lot going on, but I wasn't gonna miss this. That's why. Well, this is for all. Yeah, thank
And
you so
again, if
much.
where can people find you?
Oh, the easiest place to find everything is www.punkinstudios.com, Punkin studios.com. Everything, you can go from that hub to all of my social, to my link tree, to my EPK, everywhere you can go from there. So that's the best place to find me. Obviously, I'm on all the social platforms, but if you start with my website, you can go
That's
to everything else
fantastic.
from
I'm
there.
gonna have your links in here, and all the links. I'll also include them in the description. And again, thank you for joining me today, people. It's just better to be kind, and I love that what you do is going back to kindness. I think more we need more people like you in the world. And again, it's a fascinating conversation, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you.